right, welcome to our last session of the day on Smart Mobility Summit. So we're going to have a very interesting topic about the transformations on the logistics, moving goods. And we will have a completely different sets of speakers that we can look at how the logistics is transforming. So, but let's start the session. So just a short introduction. I'm going to be the host for the session. My name is Barbara Pareglio, and I work in GSM. So I will be just here for introducing the speakers. We have first two presentations, short presentation, and then we're going to go on the panel discussion. So I will start first introducing the first presenter. So I'm going to give a warm welcome, so please give it also an applause to Sebastian Barbias from DroneUp. Over to you, Sebastian.
My name is Sebastian Barbias. I'm heading the Aerospace Innovation Europe for DroneUp, the drone delivery company. And I'm pleased to show you a few slides about our company and what we are doing in the domain of the drones and the drone delivery, drone services, and also traffic management for the drones. Coming here, so shortly about the company, maybe for the network, mobile network industry, we are a pretty young company, but for the drones, we are already the dinosaurs in the sense because we started in 2016 where more or less all the activities around the drones has started at that time. The NASA started UTM convention in 2015 and then we start formulating the idea about the drone services. Saying that, we already have in our portfolio three main products here, or the three domain or where we are active. One of them is the flight services, and this is where we started. This is the place where we matching the drone pilots with the clients and creating the value for the clients and also business for the drone pilots. The second one, which started around COVID 2020, is the drone delivery. And a funny fact about that is that Walmart was asked to deliver the COVID test to the people around the Walmart. And they create kind of situation for the drone business, how drone can support that. And we came within a few weeks with the concept of drone delivery, test COVID to the people to somehow segregate them, that they don't have to come to the shop and buy the tests and somehow put on the risk the others. So we delivered that, and the success was so great that the people who been delivered the test came back and say, hey, this is a great job. We really appreciate that. So this was really a funny situation that they came and just talked to us that this is so cool stuff. And the last not least is the UTM product which we have. And this is the part of the acquisition from the AirMap. Maybe some of you hear about that. We putting all together, all the three pillars, to create like a sustainable end-to-end solution for the drone business. Few facts here. Based on the flight services, we already have around 22,000 pilots associated with our services who are flying for our clients and delivering the drone services there. So there was more than 100,000 flights already operated, and with those pilots, we're covering the whole US nation. So the drone delivery as such is based on the hubs which we are creating close to the Walmart location. And that's like a center where the drones are located, where the pilots are, where the whole logistics happening for the drone delivery. And we are scaling it up as the Walmart has a great penetration in the US market. And we ultimately want to cover all of that houses with our drone hubs. Up to next year, we're planning to have around 40, maybe 50 hubs on place from where we'll start the drone deliveries. But having in mind the drone services, we also want to combine the services, inspection, surveillance from those hubs which will be created there. And last, as mentioned before, AirMap as a UTM platform will support the airspace awareness, all the information which are needed to fly safely as a pilots, and also for the authority give the kind of perspective that the control over the traffic is there. Saying that, why we need the connectivity, so why I'm here, is because drones are as good as we connect them with the whole network of the pilots, of the command control, of the data which they are delivering, and ultimately drones will fly automatically, autonomously. We are still a bit ahead of this situation, but we need to create the environment where we really deliver seamlessly the data from the drone and to the drone to fly safely and really securely and start this process is highly automated. We want to fly BVLOS, and today we are flying in the short distances, but as the target is to fly really farther in the BVLOS, for that we also need the connectivity. We need for the command control and also increase the bandwidth for the data which are collecting for the services. And why drones? So I guess I not have to repeat that, but drones are already used in many aspects of the industry, on almost every kind of industry space. For the real estate, construction, the public safety, infrastructure utilities, everywhere the drones already play the role. We have to bring them to the next level where there will be no pilots behind, but really autonomously flying drones, serving on demand and delivering seamlessly the results. For that we need the connectivity. And talking about the drones as a delivery purpose, so we started from the medical delivery. We now move to the retailer, but we believe that this has to be blended, and there will be like the grocery, food, beverage deliveries. So everything blended together will bring the right value, and if this is not enough for the business, we'll bring the services from the inspection to the same place, to the same hub, to really scale and make the operation more sustainable financially. So that's the purpose of our mission here. And why DroneUp? Mentioned before, we have a national coverage. We have a really extensive network of the pilots, but also very mindful employees who understand how to build a scalable solution from the drone. So saying that from the technology perspective, but also business perspective, regulatory perspective, standards perspective. So we all embrace that, and we are looking for the partners who help us to do that together. And we already have a few clients and really expanding the network of the clients based on the services for the drones, also delivery, and finally also for the UTM, because we are looking for the services for the places where we can deploy UTM as a means of orchestrating the airspace for the county, for the states, for the cities, municipalities, or even for the different purpose of the industry. So again, blending it together, making the really advantage which we are having. How that works today for us is that we have this platform, which I explained already. Then we started from the commercial flight services, and then we ended up with the drone delivery as a services. So everything is based on the end-to-end solution for our customers. And what we are doing to really ensure that we have a proper services here is that we are collaborating with really all the stakeholders from the industry, from the drone economy industry. So starting from the manufacturer, for the sensors, for the connectivity, for safety aspects as a parachute, and we really coming together with the complete solution. And this is all the effort which we're spending today to really find out the best end-to-end solution which we can leverage for the various aspects for the drone services here. Saying that, missing part is the connectivity. So we already using today the networks, but this is more as a redundancy for the main connectivity for the command control, which is the open spectrum 900 megahertz. And we believe that the mobile network will bring more value here. Today is just a bit value. We're streaming the video from the camera. We're using it for the command control. So it's giving us some sort of let's say, feeling how the mobile network can help, but we need the partners from the mobile network operators, also the vendors, mobile network vendors, to build more sustainable solutions for the drones. And to having that in mind, we are teaming with the standardization body, as mentioned before here, ACJA. As I am one of the co-president of GUTMA, Global UTM Association, the acting body in ACGA, but we're also acting in the RTCA, EuroK, and many standardization bodies to ensure that our technologies really comply with the standards which will be needed for scaling up the whole operations here. So very shortly and short story about our company and our services. I'm happy to answer more questions during the panel, and thank you for having me here.
So thank you very much, Sebastian, for this introduction. So we've seen how as different side of the logistics, and now we're gonna have the presentations. Apologies for that. We're gonna have a presentation from Matt Hatton, which is also gonna be actually moderating the panel afterwards. So we're gonna give you a nice introduction on the logistic markets and a little bit of IoT on it. Matt, over to you.
Hello everyone, I'm Matt Hatton. I'm one of the founding partners at Transformer Insights. We're a technology research and consulting firm focused predominantly on the Internet of Things. And as Barbara said, it's my pleasure to talk to you a little bit about, just to set the scene a little bit about how we think about the world of connected logistics. And I was sitting and thinking about this a little bit and saying, okay, well, what do we mean? What do we mean by this logistics space? It covers a whole raft of different spaces. So it's everything from the origination of products. So you're looking at agriculture and manufacturing. It's warehousing. It's how you get products from A to B. So it's containers. It's inventory management, it's fleet management, it's last mile, as we heard from Sebastian, wherever he's gone. There he is. It's end-to-end asset tracking. There's also quite an interesting opportunity that's emerging in the concept of disposable devices. So things like you might attach just a printable label onto a product that you're sending in the post, and you tear off a strip and it starts tracking that device, and that's enabled by some of the low power technologies that we're seeing in the market. And then we have this concept of end-to-end supply chain. So it's not just about tracking the individual elements of the proposition. So this idea that it's not just about tracking the individual elements, but actually stitching all those pieces together. And what we've seen recently in terms of technology developments in what we might term IoT is how you bring together the various things that you're tracking, the production, the distribution, the consumption, and understand how you share data between all of these various elements. And there's a very interesting element of data exchange that's coming up in IoT. So it's all these parts, and it's how you deal with all of those collectively. Talked a little bit about this already in my introductory slide, so there was some spoilers. So drivers of connected and smart logistics, increasingly there's demand for it, not least from the consumers who are expecting to know, where's my product? Why is it not arriving with me? When can I expect to receive it? So we're seeing that. This requirement for reducing operational losses and drive more efficiency amongst anywhere in the supply chain, increasingly important. I mean, it was always important, but increasingly so recently. Regulation, can't avoid the fact that there's a whole lot of regulation being introduced recently associated with how food, for instance, is transported, medical supplies. There was the Food Safety Modernization Act here in the US, which required tracking of certain foodstuffs. Carbon footprint reduction. Everybody's got ESG goals, sustainability goals now, and I'll talk about that a little bit right at the end. Not that it's not the most important thing, but I'll leave that as my final thought. We've got an increasingly optimized and cheap set of technologies. I'll talk about that in my next slide. I don't want to preempt that one. And this concept of data sharing across the supply chain, as mentioned, you can drive a lot more efficiency by exchanging data between all the various constituent parts of the IoT, and that's increasingly being seen as being critical. And I mentioned about the technologies that are becoming available to really drive the adoption of IoT, and it boils down maybe to something like this. We talk about this concept of the thin IoT stack, and this is the fact that across all of the various constituent parts of IoT, you have increasingly optimized technologies associated with each of them, specifically for delivering the Internet of Things in a much more efficient manner. And starting at the bottom, you've got hardware. You've got things like system on chip and chip on board and thin film semiconductors and so on. You've got device software. Increasingly, you've got, say, operating systems on devices which are optimized for for more constrained devices, for devices that don't have a lot of processing, and therefore it's cheaper and easier to deploy those devices. Networking. People have been talking, I mean, we're at Mobile World Congress, so you can't get away from talking about networks, and I'm not going to get away from that. Things like narrowband IoT and LTE-M, plus some non-3GPP technologies, things like LoRaWAN and, dare I say it, Sigfox, we'll see what happens with that, have come available and providing a much cheaper way of connecting devices, a much more effective way of connecting devices. Middleware, you've got a sort of a platformization of IoT, delivering a set of software features and functions which make it much easier for any given organization to deploy an IoT solution. And then up at the top I mentioned edge computing and machine learning. Well, you might say to me, well, that doesn't sound very thin, using AI. AI is this new highfalutin, very, very sophisticated thing, but this is working under some other slightly different constraints. Maybe if your network connectivity isn't quite so good, what you need to do is put the intelligence at the edge device, or use AI to automate a lot of those processes. And so what you've got is some richer tools to allow you to cope with the fact that maybe you've got constraints in other aspects. So we've got this thin IoT stack. This isn't necessarily specific to the logistics space, but cutting across all of IoT, but it's enabled us to do an awful lot more in terms of deploying cheap and easily deployed IoT. And it would not be an analyst presentation if I did not put a slide that showed how many billions of connected devices there are going to be in the world. This is not how many billions of connected devices there are going to be in the world. I carved out specifically the things related to supply chain and specifically the things relating to cellular. I'm conscious of who our hosts are here, and they'd obviously want me to talk about cellular. But actually it's more relevant than that, because when we think about supply chain, most of that stuff is going to be out there in the field. It's going to be a requirement to be cellular connected, or potentially by satellite. So that market, it's about 1 billion cellular connected devices in 2030 and 4 billion devices overall, so including all of those devices used in warehouses and other on-premises using private networks, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, whatever, as a connectivity technology. And that's 20-25% of the cellular space. That 1 billion connected devices, 20 to 25% of the cellular space, reflecting the importance of this logistics in this broadest sense term. Actually, I've quite narrowly defined it. If you think about it in its broadest sense, actually it probably includes billions and billions more devices even than that. So this is important for the cellular IoT space like pretty much nothing else apart from maybe connected cars, because let's face it, they're all going to be connected. And I said I'd mention a little bit about sustainability. This is an area that we are increasingly doing a lot of work in, looking at how IoT can be used for achieving sustainable development goals, enterprises ESG goals. And what we did earlier on in the year is we looked at what do we think are going to be the main solution areas that enterprises are going to use to, enterprises, cities, it's a whole raft of organizations, are going to use in order to be more sustainable. And we identified a dozen areas, our clean dozen. You're probably familiar with the dirty dozen. Well, this is our clean dozen of IoT solutions that are very focused on or can be applied to carbon savings, water savings, a whole host of things relating to environmental factors. So you can see that down the right-hand side. The interesting thing is there is a tremendous amount of benefit that can be accrued as a result of using some of these things like fleet management, supply chain. These areas within this logistics sector account for a very substantial part of that sustainability message. So you might be able to pick out things like smart supply chain, fleet operations, fleet accounts for something like 37% of carbon emissions, and we reckon something like 20 to 25% reduction to that can come from using a fleet management solution. And as a result, you get to something like reducing the global output of CO2 by 3%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean that's a very significant thing. So when we think about this logistics space, we have to think about the sustainability angle as well, and I'm sure we'll be discussing that on the panel. On which note, I would like to invite my panelists, if you could come up and join me on the stage, and we can all get ready and prepare for that. Welcome, everyone. Intros first. Well, Sebastian, you've already introduced yourself. You probably need no further introduction. Anybody who wasn't paying attention to your 10-minute speech doesn't deserve to know who you are.
Just don't fall off the stage.
Lawrence, if you could say a few words of introduction and explain who you are and what you do and what your organisation does.
Thank you, Matt. So I'm Lawrence Latham. I'm the CEO of EveryNet. We are the largest operator of national scale LoRaWAN networks, low power wide area. We have networks in the US, Indonesia, Brazil, various countries in Europe. So we operate very large networks.
Tracy?
I'm Tracy Brewster, Senior Vice President of IoT Managed Services for Core Wireless. My area of responsibility is forward and reverse logistics and enabling a lot of the industries to do exactly what we're talking about today, in addition to having our cellular capabilities provide that enablement.
Fantastic. Parker?
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Parker Conroy, Associate Director with Verizon, focusing on robotics.
Awesome. So the way we're going to run the panel is I've got a set of structured questions that I will be putting to these good folks. We will have opportunity for you to ask questions out there towards the end of the session. So if there's anything that strikes you and you want to ask a question, then yeah, save it till then, and we'll come to the audience when we've got maybe 10 minutes to go or so. But let me kick things off. Supply chain pressures. How do you see supply chain pressures? There seems to be something of an economic perfect storm going on at the moment. How do you see the challenges in the supply chain world at the moment? Sebastian, I'll start with you if you like.
Yeah, so when we come into the supply chain and the things which you are embracing here, so what comes to my mind is the last mile delivery, right? So how we ensure that we can create, or maybe I'll start from a different angle. So the customer is expecting to get delivered things faster than before. So before that was like next day delivery was good enough. Now it's coming to the point that, okay, I want to order now, and in 30 minutes or maybe faster, I want to have the goods because I need them. And this could turn into the two directions. One is that quickly deliver to the guys or to the customers, so they are happy, but on the other hand, we can also save some environment because they don't have to drive to the shops, right? So we are creating like a new paradigm that we are delivering faster with the drones and also reducing the carbon footprint from the trucks, and also bringing these electric vehicles which making this happen.
So you see it as being a pressure from the end user is one big significant area of it. That's interesting. Lawrence?
Yep. So I have a little bit different take, but
yeah,
I think there are several different factors, but one of the primary ones is visibility. So we have a network in Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, they weren't using it for tracking, and they found within the last 6 months, $1 million worth of bottled water from Hurricane Maria time that was on pallets in a warehouse that people just lost track of. And then I think we saw with the pandemic, with things backed up, where are my goods? Then people started panicking. You know, over the years, people have switched to lean manufacturing or, Kanban type stuff. And then, we've taken all the shock absorbers out of the system. And so when you lose those shock absorbers and you have no visibility, we end up with situations we have now. Last year there were not enough chips to go around. Now there are actually too many in some cases. People double ordered and things like that.
I think it depends who you talk to, but that's an interesting area. Okay, Tracy. So we've had consumer pressure, sustainability, visibility. You got a different angle for me for
I'll take a different angle on that, although
Awesome.
I agree with everything they said. You know, some of the interesting challenges around supply chain right now, obviously everybody's familiar with chipset issues, but one of the things I'm hearing a lot from our customers is around employees and employee availability impacting supply chain because they don't have the resources in order to be able to respond quickly. So we still have to keep up with the pressures of expectations in customers, but doing that in an environment that's where automation, you know, tends to play in a lot to help reduce some of that employee pressure.
Okay. So we're doing pretty well with unique views on this. Parker, I'm hoping you've got something different for me as well.
I'll see what I can come up with. But I think it's fair to say, and the pandemic was mentioned here,
Yep.
we saw 10 years of growth in e-commerce over the course of 2 years.
Yeah.
That is a stressor within itself.
Yeah.
It's not like the industry wasn't going to get here.
Right.
It's just that we got here a lot faster than we expected. So I think that, to add another unique point, the digitization of so many processes through there. So you can optimize for labor usage, so you can optimize for traceability and for doing this in a sustainable way. I think that these aren't unique pressures. I just think that we got here a lot faster than we expected.
Yeah, okay. Now, your focus area, okay, robotics. Robotics potentially covers a multitude of, I was going to say a multitude of sins, but that's not really what I mean, right? Warehousing, manufacturing, all of these various different areas, is that where you're focused? I mean, can you talk us through a little bit on that?
Absolutely. I mean, so you can work with Verizon directly if you want to put autonomous forklifts in your environment, or you want to move boxes from one place to another. You know, we had a recent acquisition that we can help with that in that space. But I think in much more general terms, if you zoom out, robots in the factory, in the warehouse, or in last mile delivery need to be sustained from a strong connectivity and compute standpoint. And I saw you mention kind of like a thin client concept in your presentation. Robots need to become better at what they're doing. And one way to do that is to drop the cost of the platform and move that compute either to edge devices or move it all the way to the cloud. And you need a strong network to be able to support that kind of workload. So we're looking at it from the private 5G story inside of manufacturing and warehousing. We're also looking at it from the public 5G story to say that, can we put a robot out there? Can we help producers put robots out there that are cheaper and more efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on another topic of the technology areas. That is one I want to go into, and we may as well jump into that now. So this approach of robotics for addressing supply chain requirements, I mean, that's where you're seeing other interesting technologies. I mean, you mentioned edge compute. Other interesting technology areas that you see as having a significant impact on supply chain?
I can rattle off, you know, computer vision and AI and a whole bunch of other 2-letter, 3-letter acronyms. I think where we're going, though, is the integration of these things together.
Yeah.
I think that having a supply chain that respects that data needs to go from when that thing is introduced into the logistics environment all the way through that last mile delivery. Yeah. That's what we're working with now with logistics providers is their main problem. They have islands of data in each of these locations that aren't talking to each other. Yeah. So there's technologies you can apply to each of these, but I think it's being able to take a step back and work with somebody who can help you manage those workflows in a holistic way.
Yeah, okay. Tracy? Interesting technology areas that you think are going to have the biggest impact on the supply chain. So, are we talking 5G? Are we talking IoT? Are we talking AI? Are we talking edge computing?
Yep.
What's
well, I do think DroneUp's got a great story, and we had worked with a customer as well that was really impacting the healthcare supply chain as far as being able to utilize drones to get cold chain, vaccines out to remote areas where it might take days to get something to a remote island. You know, the drone technology got it there in 30 minutes. So I do think that there's going to be a lot around the drone technology for smaller things that need to be delivered. And I think that'll be an interesting thing to see where that goes.
Okay, on the subject of drones, maybe I should let you well, I mean, drones obviously. Other technology areas you think are going to have a significant impact on this supply chain area?
Yeah, obviously the communication is the important aspect here. And I would recall, Parker, so that automation robotics for this loading, unloading the drones is really crucial here. So we have to take into account that drones will deliver, but we have to handle drones somehow. change the battery, maintain the drones, load the drones with the parcels or the goods which we're going to deliver there. It's really important aspect to come to the point where we can say human is not needed there because the drones will fly autonomously and react automatically for some actions which are created by the people.
Yeah. Okay. So it's that autonomy. It's that overlay on top of just the basic technology.
Yeah, all the technology which enable autonomy. So I would say it this way.
Yeah. Good. Lawrence, what are you going to tell me is the,
I thought
is
you
the
were
hot
leaving
technology?
me out. I was
No. I just seemed like an obvious thing. Drones to drones.
He and I have known each other a long time. And we're a client, by the way. They have a great service.
Thank you very
There
much.
go.
Thank you for that.
I'll have a beer afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you money later.
Okay. So, can anybody guess, no Googling, how many pallets like this a day are on the move just in the USA? And not international, just in the USA on a given day? 100,000. Going once, going twice. How much? 500,000.
Billion.
Sir?
25 million?
25 million. 1.8 billion pallets. Google it. You can fact check me. So that's a lot of pallets. And we can think of all these great things, but we start with the simplest. Where are the goods, right? Let's start there. I'm not even talking about then being able to contextualize what's on the pallet. That would be the next step, right? Then all the big data analytics that come from that, just in the US, the things you could figure out. But the first thing is, where is my pallet? And so this is an actual problem that people are working on today. Our networks cover ports in all of our different countries, in the US, Brazil, wherever. We have a new network that covers the Strait of Singapore. That covers about 3 or 4 different ports. And it's a turnover of 150 million containers per year just in this little area, heavily trafficked. And I've met with the general managers of the ports. It's all manual. So, I asked Matt before, because I've heard different numbers, what % of the supply chain is digitized? You kind of stole my thing. And depending on whose numbers you believe, I asked another analyst friend, and it's 5 to 10% has been digitized. And then I think Gartner, they say somewhere between 20 and 30%. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, like containers. And pallets. You can't plug in a pallet. Not a lot of intelligence there, gets hit by forklifts, but there are ways to track them, and we're working on that. And so it is automation, it is bringing all these tools together, but, and you mentioned something earlier about a printed tracker. So this one is a beacon plus temperature, and it's just paper, slap and track. You can put it on a box, you can put it on anything like that. So from our perspective, we're just working on these dumb things and help them communicate, right? And get there. So that's our focus, is really on some of these more simple aspects of logistics, but when you start adding up the numbers, it's huge globally.
So the baseline is you've got to connect it. You've got to have some idea of where all these things are, right? That's before you start doing anything or trying to do anything more sophisticated. You've got to have that sort of baseline view,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't hear much talk of, to go from one extreme of the technology sophistication to the other, didn't hear much talk about AI. How do you see that as a panel? Anybody got a particular view on artificial intelligence, that application for smart mobility, for supply chain type things?
So for AI, you've got to feed the beast.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a hungry beast, and it's sensorized data, no matter what connectivity technology or where it's coming from. So the big goal right now is to sensorize a lot of stuff, no matter the technology, because IoT is not one size fits all. It's not just low power, it's satellite, it's all these other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? The AI question?
I don't think you can ignore what we're seeing in autonomous cars and the influences that's going to have on the trucking industry with moving tractor trailers through autonomous means. I mean, I saw, I think it was this week when I was doing a little prep, that there were more drivers of trailer trucks hired in the last year than the year previous and the year previous. So even this industry that where if you look out 5 or 10 years, you think that this is going to be done by machines, by robots, there's such a huge demand right now to fill those roles. So if that demand is so strong and you're seeing this pressure from last mile delivery vehicles, driving on the road, dropping burritos off in colleges, and you see autonomous cars getting to where they are today, I think this is going to be an incredibly disruptive technology. But I also think for the sake of sustainability, for the sake of fuel usage, for the sake of labor utilization, the AI that's going into that space now is going to be transformative. And it's on the backs of the data. You need incredible maps to be able to do that. Right. You need to understand how that robot drives.
Yeah.
So you got to feed the beast. You got to get all that data in there. But I think companies are building the bedrock to be able to go do that now.
But does that mean then that, okay, you mentioned they're still hiring more and more drivers. Is there an end in sight for that? I mean, will everything eventually go autonomous in terms of all truck delivery? Is it, what's the end game?
Interesting.
That's one of the most troubling questions to ask a guy who really loves robots.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are robots going to get rid of everybody's job? I live on one far side of that argument, which is the best applications I've ever seen are when there is like a seamless blending of what the robot does and what the person does.
Yeah.
Right? The dull, dirty, dangerous jobs, I think those should be automated. Right? They're not great work for people. But at the same time, you've got edge cases, you've got management of robotic devices.
Yeah.
You have situations, oh look, it started snowing. Well, now our AI can't drive, so now the goods don't get where they need to go. It has to be a synergy of what people are good at and what automation is good at. And automation is going to keep advancing, and people are going to keep advancing in the same way. It's going to be a back and forth. I don't see a future where robots take this over 100%.
No, fair enough.
Can I just add something about the job thing?
Certainly.
I mean, when you're talking about robots and things like this, we're talking about an electromechanical world. And, I just went through Schiphol the other day. Half the moving sidewalks aren't working. There's Kone people over here. And with the little bit of automation we have today, I mean, these are going to be high-paying, high-skilled jobs. Yeah. And while some of those jobs that are not good for humans go away, there will be a transformation to all those things. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Tracy, any perspective?
I totally echo what they're saying, and even today you're starting to see smart warehouses, but you still need the people in there when something goes sideways. So I agree. Although we think that we're going to get to everything autonomous, I think there's still a human element that's going to be required. But definitely, it's moving in an interesting direction as we automate more. Machine learning. When you look at smart warehouses and robotics and in the warehouse industries and the machine learning that's happening. We're definitely reducing the dependency where there used to be people, but there's still a people element to that.
Yeah, so maybe one comment about this AI and automation. So the drone industry is the perfect spot here because we don't have the problem as automotive industry in terms of the AI. AI in automotive has a lot of obstacles like the human on the streets, right? So they are the biggest threat for the autonomous cars. And in the sky, we have pretty open in the space, right? So there's no really obstacles. We can digitalize them and we can just deliver the digital airspace information to the drones so they can act automatically. And that's a really huge potential for the AI applications. And we are using the AI today for defining where the drone should drop the parcel. Mm-hmm. So the visual recognition of the space under the drone helps us to determine there is a human, maybe because sometimes people are coming too close, so we'll not deliver the parcel there. Yeah. And we already using that services here. But moving further, the drones will really act autonomously at some point, and this is much easier than on the roads today.
And learnings that can be transferred into autonomous vehicles on the roads? Is it even possible to do that? Because obviously, if you're in an environment where you can you can be at the cutting edge because it's a less risky environment to be in. He says of things that have rotor blades and fly over people's heads, but less risky environment. Is it transferable?
I'm not sure about that because the automotive has different problems to solve, and at the end they can stop. Drones cannot stop like this, right? Yeah. You can hover, but then you have a limited energy. So you have to think through how you mitigate the risk that you're flying over the people, and this can be calculated based on the data which we're collecting from the various sources. So we have to always think about the plan A, B, C, D when we are planning the missions. And this can be easily automated, and the machine can decide, okay, if this fails, we go there. So maybe some parts of this automation can be passed to the automotive and vice versa, but I don't think that this is really similar cases here.
No, fair point. I want to change tack a little bit now. I want to talk about adoption. Now, I went through about, 8 or 10 different use cases in one of my slides of, here's ways that IoT could be used for in supply chain areas. Tracy, perhaps I'll come to you first. Core covers most of these areas. Are there particular ones of those? I was going to say verticals. It's not verticals, is it? But particularly ones of those use cases that you're seeing more adoption in, less adoption in. Are there some interesting trends going on in that?
There's a lot of interesting trends. As far as adoption, I think it really comes down to the use case. I think there's some great use cases, but it depends on size of company. I think there are some companies that, based on the cost benefits right now, are able to implement more than maybe some other companies are. I do think that the sustainability factor, the ESG, initiatives are starting to play a large role. Perfect use cases. We worked with a customer who actually had automation on school buses. And so therefore, when a child doesn't swipe their RF chip, they know they can reroute, or if there's an accident somewhere, they can reroute. So I think companies are looking more and more of how can they kind of, handle those types of things. And so I'm seeing a lot of adoption in those areas as well.
Yeah, Lauren?
Tracy mentioned earlier about cold chain, right? Yep. And so with the pandemic, we got involved in cold chain tracking as well for vaccines and things like that. And that one has moved quickly because of the value of the inventory. So whether it's fish in trucks or in planes or things like that. So cold chain seems to be being rapidly adopted to me.
Okay. Parker? You have a particular focus on specific areas, but I'm interested in, is it all warehousing, or is it all manufacturing, or is it all, some other area where the robotics application in this supply chain is most useful?
I'm going to make the argument that a robot can benefit just about everybody.
Okay.
But to put some space between that, I think that there are a lot of technologies that you can take advantage of to make, for example, packing your tractor trailers more efficient. Everybody's doing that. And what do you need to go do that? You need a camera or a LiDAR. You need a really small technology stack to be able to increase your utilization of that trailer, from 70% to 80% to 90%, right? It's not a big lift to add technologies like that. So I think that IoT can have a big influence on the large enterprises. And I also think that there are other technologies that are applicable, down the supply chain, even to the smaller groups. But I would say that, for example, even safety technologies that you can bring into warehousing, that's applicable at every level, every size of company. So my argument is always just start now. Go look out at what's available in the market now and start to take advantage of it. And as your ROI or your CapEx expectations are made more clear, start investing. The worst thing you can do is just not engage and think that the old way of doing things is going to work in the future. And it is, but it's, Darwin's going to show up.
Yeah, that's interesting. With the drone delivery, there must be an element of, there's a whole bunch of companies who are just saying, the old way of doing things is working fine. We'll carry on with that. Have you got any indication of how much of a competitive differentiator it might be to use drones for your last mile delivery versus others? Because that's essentially what you're talking about. Is these things are competitive differentiators. You've got to implement these technologies to stay ahead of the competition. So do you get pushback from companies on drones?
Yeah, so I was discussing with a logistic company in Europe, which is really leader in the lockers logistics. You know, instead of delivering to house, they're delivering to lockers. They said, we reduce the cost per parcel really dramatically. Nobody can really beat us today because one van delivered to the locker like 100 parcels. You cannot do it with house-to-house delivery. And when I talked to them, they said, what you can do cheaper than this? I said, come on, I cannot. I cannot make cheaper than what you are doing today, but I can bring another cases.
Yep.
So if you need delivery, as mentioned, ad hoc, because clients need that, or maybe someone has a big need and we can reduce the footprint or carbon footprint, we can use the drones. So I think that the question is it's not what we replace, but what we create with the drones. So what kind of new capabilities we are creating, what not existing today. And I think this is the path forward. So we're continuously evolving as a humans, right? So before, when we didn't have the mobile phones, we used the fixed phones, and we'd be super happy. And suddenly, mobile phones, smartphones came, and we have plenty of application which we never thought before. And suddenly, our lives changed. So I think that drones are in the same position. We don't know yet how they will be properly used, but at least we are positioning them in the market that they can be serving for delivery, for the inspection, for some sort of surveillance. We can put the different sensors aboard. We can send them to the really dirty environment, and they will do the job from the sky or can land and drive somewhere. So there is plenty of application. We simply have to find out how to use them in the certain places.
Interesting. I said I'd give you all the opportunity to ask questions if you have any. There's a gentleman here who has his hand raised. Please do ask.
I'd ask each member of the panel to cast their vision out, say 10 years. What's the most surprising disruption in logistics?
Are you in the logistics sector? You are. All right.
In 10 years.
In 10 years' time.
Wow. I don't know. But, you know, that I will give you this example which I just said about the mobile phones. 20 years ago, have you thought that mobile phones will be everywhere as a small PC in our hands? So I think that in logistic perspective, so we are evolving pretty fast. We're tagging, what you said, everything to just know where it's going, so we improved it a lot. Now adding the drones and the robots, so we are jumping to another layer. So what will happen in 10 years is just the matter how we create the ecosystem around this.
Right.
Yes.
Lawrence.
And so, you know, look how long it took Amazon to get where they are today, right? And so in technology terms, 10 or 20 years, it's actually, you know, it takes a while, right? Because first we have to crawl, then we can run, and then we can walk, then we can run. And so then it's about bringing the combination of the technologies together and learning. So, you know, using the examples of, all right, first we track the containers, now we can track them on the ships using, you know, Iridium or something like that. Then they get on the ground. And then, by the way, the ships happen to be electric and they're autonomous now. I'm much less scared of an autonomous, you know, cargo ship than I'm an 18-wheeler on the highway. But anyway, that's just me. But, you know, so...
You a sailor, Lawrence. You may change your view if you're a sailor.
So, being in Rotterdam, I get to see a lot of them. So anyway, so, you know, it's stacking on top, right, of the technologies and then bringing them together. Things like where we are today, we're using vehicle tracking, and I call it LoJack 2024. And we're talking with a drone company. So we can now track a device. LoJack, they used to have to put this equipment in the back of the police cars, and then they would scan and they would have to see, oh, where's the stolen car? Well, today with our technology, you can identify it, you know, wirelessly. Oh, it's right here. Before the police ever come out, then you send a drone. The drone and maybe uses facial recognition, whatever, but get situational awareness for the law enforcement officer. You know, is the car in the back of a yard with a bunch of guys with guns? Is, you know, how many people are in the car? Who is the driver? Is he a bad guy? Can we get him later? But so when the police come up, they've already got a video feed for complete situational awareness. So, I actually do think some of the things they're learning will be applied to other places. I've always been amazed. You give good technology to really smart engineers and they do stuff you never imagined, right? It's cool. And so I do think all these things come together, and the robotics and shipping, right? And it's amazing when you go to some of the ports these days, what they have. So, I think it's not like a big blip and all of a sudden it's nirvana, but we'll build on those. And I would say in 10 years, we would be somewhere between walk and run. Speed walking, we'll be speed walking in 10 years.
Okay. To read between the lines on the questions, I guess if the gentleman here is from the logistics space, and we're all, well, mostly, Tracy, mobile and related to networks, maybe how does the mobile space change to influence the logistics space in 10 years' time, just to try and narrow it down a little bit? Otherwise, we're talking about, well, it's a boil the ocean kind of a question.
Right, because I was going to say there's probably not one thing, right? Yeah. And we're making adoption towards smart trackers and things like that. I think that eSIM is going to be one of the big things that is really going to help not only logistics, but many industries as a whole. Because you hear connectivity is a challenge, and being able to have devices that can roam on multiple carriers no matter where they are and have reliable connectivity, either through cellular or satellite, where maybe there's areas they can't get connectivity today. I think that that's going to be, as we see that continue to move forward, I think that's going to be a huge benefit in the logistics space.
There was one thing on one of your slides about data sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so forget the technology, are people going to share enough data that we can actually do something with it?
I'm asking you. They're getting there, and supply chain is probably the number one space in which that's likely to happen. This concept of multi-tenanted data sharing between all the various constituent parts. Yeah, of course. And not there yet, but it's certainly moving in that direction. So Parker, same question to you from the fellow in the audience.
I think I have a pretty specific answer in the logistics space, which is some big improvements to distribution in dense urban areas. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have now, and particularly in Asia, seeing these massive cities that you're not able to get next day delivery and these types of things in. I think robotics is a huge piece of being able to enable that. I think the connectivity and the compute that wireless networks enable, without those two pieces, I don't think you get to automated distribution centers in urban areas. And I think that's one of the challenges we have just as society continues to grow in that direction, is the density of people in those spaces and to be able to deliver in those spaces. So I think as the network grows and as robotics improve, it makes that a possibility. And that means that you can get something delivered in a couple hours, which might have taken a day before.
Fantastic. Tracy, I want to come back to something that you mentioned significantly earlier, around sustainability. So I talked a bit about sustainability. Are you seeing that from your customers as being a driver when it comes to adopting IoT across the supply chain? Because normally we think about it as make money, save money, stay out of jail. Those are the main reasons you deploy IoT. There's now kind of a fourth one, save the planet. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing it? Is it really a thing?
It's interesting. It's really less around the adoption for IoT and more of, we see a lot of customers coming to us asking us questions about how we're doing our business and whether or not that leads to sustainability. So it's really less about them adopting the practices for their own. I mean, they do obviously are doing their own sustainability, but then they come back to us and start to ask us about our practices for, our footprint, our green footprint and things like that. So it's an interesting how it's being adopted is more from a supplier source, or tell us how they're doing things. Are they, making sure there's no human trafficking? There's a whole list of things that go into that, but it's really more right now, less of using IoT to enable and more around just understanding how businesses are being done and whether or not you're contributing to that.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Drones I want to come to though. So on my little slide I put up, talking about sustainability. I didn't get to it, but something like it's the carbon footprint of a drone delivery is something like 1/6 of that of motorcycle delivery.
Yep.
Approximately. That's pretty significant. So is that a driver for your customers, or is it mostly still about cost?
Well, I think that this is like a blend. So customers are looking how to deliver faster, how to deliver cheaper, and how to become green, right? So in this sense. The same as the logistic companies are switching to the electric cars because they want to pollute as they do with the fuel. So we are not coming yet to the point that they are selecting drones because they are more green. However, in Europe, the European Commission stated that drone delivery or drone or urban air mobility will become the very strong driver towards sustainability and the green energy utilization. So there is already discussion about that, and the drones are playing a really crucial role here. However, in our business, this is not yet the decision maker.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. We're out of time, but Lawrence and Parker, I'm going to give you a chance to have a go at that sustainability question if you've got a comment to make on it.
Nope.
Parker?
We're driving, last mile delivery, we're driving 3,000-pound vehicles to deliver things this big.
Yeah.
That can't be sustainable, right? We have to get to a future where we're utilizing drones, and we have to get to a future where we're using robotic last mile delivery vehicles to get past that ineffectiveness. It just, if you look at it from a distance, taking a person and a vehicle that size to deliver like food at the end of the day is insane. And there's no way that that's sustainable. So I think that the only way to move forward there is through more robotics.
Absolutely. Yeah. On that note, thank you, panel. Much appreciated. Round of applause for the panel.
Thank you, Matt.